Hi Guy, welcome back. In our spoilers. Why in our spoilers that Phyllis Summers soon realizes that her plan is spiraling out of control right before her eyes. Instead of sticking to the original deal, Victor Newman chooses a more direct and ruthless path, attacking Kane Ashby's company directly. When the first information about Victor's move resounds throughout Genoa City, Phyllis is not only worried, but also feels like she's been dragged into a game of chess in which she was never really in control. She goes to see Kane with the mindset of someone who needs answers and has to hide her feelings of betrayal. The encounter is not premeditated, but it reveals the full extent of the problem. Kane frankly admits that the AI program, the centerpiece of their deal, is now installed inside the system, infiltrating the internal operations of his company. That statement sounded like a warning, like living proof that Victor had not only crossed the line, but had also arbitrarily used a strategic weapon that should have been in someone else's hands. Phyllis's instinct immediately wanted to put all the responsibility on Victor to affirm that she had no intention of destroying Kane's company. However, even as she tried to explain, Kane's eyes remained vigilant and suspicious to him. Phyllis was not an innocent bystander. She was the one who opened the door for Victor to enter, the first one to agree to let the program exist for whatever reason. The feeling of being used mixed with the feeling of being accused made Phyllis feel like she was caught in a crossfire trying to protect herself while also being unable to deny her role in the unfolding chaos. The tension increased even more when Billy Abbott appeared like another knife twisting at the weak point of both. Billy did not miss the opportunity to taunt and provoke Kane, making the already tense atmosphere even more uncomfortable. But instead of losing his temper, Kane chose to respond with a sharp insinuation that he would put things to rest before it got out of hand. Then left with the determination of someone who refused to be preyed upon in someone else's power play. Kane's words were not only a warning to Billy, but also a message to all involved. He would not let himself be taken advantage of. Would not let the AI program become a rope that strangled his efforts and honor. When Kane left, the gap between Phyllis and Billy became even more obvious. Billy quickly sensed something was wrong with Phyllis's demeanor and immediately began to question her about the fires that were burning around her, the troubles, the secrets, the connections between Victor Kane and the AI program that he sensed Phyllis knew more about than she was willing to share. But Phyllis, instead of sharing, chose to close the door. She refused to reveal anything more, not only because she didn't trust Billy, but because she understood that the more people entered, the more out of control things would become, between Kane's pressure, Victor's interference, and Billy's probing gaze. She was forced to keep the most dangerous things to herself as the only way to have a bit of initiative in this trap-filled game. Determined to reclaim her voice, Phyllis did not choose to stand still. She went to Victor's farm carrying anger and a sense of betrayal, ready to face the man who had so casually changed the rules of the game. In Phyllis's mind, their agreement was more than just numbers or terms. It was a clear line about how the AI program would be used and where it belonged. Victor's unannounced introduction of the technology into Kane's company not only left her out of control, but also left her facing the consequences. On his behalf, when confronted, Phyllis expressed her displeasure, even anger. She reiterated the original agreement, insisting that what was happening did not reflect what they had agreed to. But Victor, with the fortitude of someone used to manipulating things to his liking, did not back down. He listened, but he was unapologetic. In Victor's eyes, the AI program was a tool, and he alone had the right to decide how it was used. He assumed that Phyllis would still get what she wanted when he launched his attack on Jabo, as if everything were just a step in a larger strategy that he alone understood. Phyllis's discomfort didn't change his course. It only made the boundary between them more fragile and vulnerable. In that moment, Phyllis saw the cruel laws of Genoa City at work once again. Agreements without real power were illusions. Alliances without trust were temporary, and anyone who bet on Victor's word without preparing an escape route could become a pawn on his chessboard. The AI, which was supposed to be her chance to prove her intelligence, control, and ability to turn the tide, now became living proof that she was being led into a battle whose rules were written by others. She couldn't change the past. Couldn't stop Victor from making his move. Couldn't force Kane to trust her immediately. But pent-up emotion didn't turn into weakness. It turned into awareness. Phyllis understood that if she wanted to escape passivity, she had to stop waiting for others to keep their word and start calculating for herself. She must find a way to prove that she is not Kane's betrayer, not Victor's pawn, but someone capable of reshaping the game. And it is from that vulnerability, from feeling sidelined by the very plan she helped create, that Phyllis begins to see more clearly the nature of the men who control the situation, and at the same time, deeply aware that there is only one way for her to survive, not to let anyone else decide for her, whether it be Victor Newman Kane Ashby or Billy Abbott. Kane left his confrontation with Phyllis with a lingering suspicion, and when he stood before Victor, he no longer maintained any veneer of politeness. He looked straight at the man who had pushed things too far, accusing Victor, without hesitation, of deploying the AI program on his empire. The question was not just about the program, but about betrayal, about who had authorized it, who was behind it, who dared to interfere in his company's internal affairs, as if it were just a chessboard for someone else's power. In Kane's mind, all roads led back to Victor. But at the same time, another shadow of doubt arose. Did Phyllis have the ability and motive to do this without him? The sophisticated intrusion of the AI program was not the work of an amateur. Her intelligence, Phyllis, ambition, and history of shady dealings was suddenly no longer the only person he thought he could trust. He didn't know if she'd betrayed him or just been dragged in, if she was a used ally or a key player in the game, but he was sure of one thing: someone had opened the door for Victor, and he wasn't going to let it go unnoticed. Kane's anger wasn't just directed at Victor for attacking his company, but also at his own sense of powerlessness, as everything he had control over was invaded without his knowledge. Faced with Kane's accusations, Victor didn't duck, nor did he lower himself to admit his mistakes. He didn't confess, didn't defend, and instead chose a response that only made the other person more angry: complacency. Victor knew the impact of the AI program, knew what it could do when it infiltrated a company's structure, and now that it had infiltrated Kane's own system, he was almost pleased with the feeling of being cornered for Victor. It wasn't a sin, it was a strategy. He didn't see himself as wrong in using a tool he had in his hands to prove that no empire was inviolable, especially when it didn't belong to people he respected or considered his equals. The sense of victory was evident in his eyes, in every vague and meaningful sentence, as if Kane's doomsday program coming back to bite his own company was an inevitable result, a reminder that no one was allowed to play a game beyond their tolerance if they weren't willing to pay the price. Kane could be angry, could question, could doubt Phyllis, but to Victor, all of these were predictable reactions. He didn't need to justify himself, because in his mind, the stronger person wasn't the one who had to defend. When Kane left, leaving behind a storm of pent-up emotions, the space around Victor seemed to calm down, but was actually just moving into another phase of the battle of wits. Adam Newman entered, carrying the familiar cold gaze of someone who had seen too many power struggles and knew that none of Victor's moves were accidental. Adam looked at what had just happened and couldn't deny that Victor had acted in his own nature: proactive, aggressive, dominant. He praised his father for the strike on Kane because from a purely strategic perspective, it was a move not to be underestimated. But even in his praise, Adam couldn't hide his concern. He knew that whenever Victor started using a tool like an AI program to attack an opponent, he was thinking beyond a single target. Kane was just the beginning. What Victor had done to Kane's company was a warning to those who might be next, and Adam knew exactly who his father was looking at when he left Victor. Adam sought Chelsea out at society to update him on the situation, but not in the spirit of someone who would gloat over someone else's downfall. He recounted what had happened, talked about the attack on Kane's empire, about how Victor had used the AI program as a strategic weapon, but his voice was not triumphant, but rather filled with an indescribable conflict. No longer shying away, Adam admits to Chelsea that Victor has given him a new mission to create a diversion against the Abbotts, giving Victor enough space and time to deploy the AI program on Jabot like he did on Kane's company. It's more than a strategic request, it's a call for him to be a direct tool in the plan to destroy someone he considered a friend. His time with the Abbotts with Jack is running out, and Adam knows it. He finds himself at a crossroads between loyalty to his father and an ethical line he's unwilling to cross again. The thought of betraying Jack by helping Victor weighs heavily on Adam, as if he's reverting to an older version of himself, one who wouldn't hesitate to drag innocent people into destruction just to prove something to the Newmans. But now, having experienced so much loss, so much destruction and regret, he could no longer accept being a person who would blindly trample on others. His silence after his confession told Chelsea more than any excuse. Adam could not see this as a simple deal. Chelsea, with her frankness and emotional acumen, immediately pointed out something that seemed obvious but was difficult to accept in the Newman household. Adam could absolutely say no. She said that he was not obligated to follow Victor's plan, not obligated to be an extension of attacks he did not believe were right. Refusing was not weakness. It might be the only way for him to hold on to the part of himself he had struggled to protect for so many years. She saw clearly the struggle in Adam's eyes between a father who always demanded absolute loyalty and a man mature enough to understand that every decision he made had its price. But when Chelsea made that choice, Adam didn't easily agree. He knew Victor. He knew that in Victor Newman's world, every action was measured in terms of loyalty or betrayal. His refusal to participate in this plan would never be a simple no. In Victor's eyes, it would be a silent declaration of war, a sign that Adam was siding with an outsider over his own family, and the consequences of that Adam knew all too well were never gentle. In the midst of Chelsea's arguments and his long-standing obsession with his father's overbearing shadow, Adam suddenly realized that perhaps Chelsea was right this time about the honest approach. He could no longer continue to live a life of evasion, half-heartedness, trying to please Victor while hoping to keep his conscience. That way of living would only drag him into a never-ending cycle of mistakes and redemption. If he wanted to protect Jack, if he wanted to avoid being complicit in the destruction once more, he had to confront Victor, tell him the truth about his position, even if it meant risking the wrath of the father he both respected and resented. The idea of choosing honesty seemed simple enough in words, but for Adam, it was a turning point. It forced him to look at himself, to look at the times he had destroyed good people, people who had reached out to him just to prove himself worthy of being a Newman. This time, he knew if he continued down that path, he would forever lose the chance to maintain a fragile but sincere relationship with Jack, and most of all, lose the last shred of respect he had for himself. Chelsea didn't force him to make a decision right away. Instead, she posed a final question, sharp and gentle. Would Adam be willing to stand up to Victor to protect Jack? It wasn't just a question of an AI plan, not just about Jabo or the Abbotts, but about who Adam chose to be. Would he continue to live as a shadow controlled by Victor, or would he accept his father's anger while retaining the humanity he had sacrificed so much to regain in that moment? Adam knew he had a lot to think about. It wasn't about right or wrong on the surface, but about who he would be in this fight. Each choice carried danger. If he helped Victor, he betrayed his friend. If he protected Jack, he defied his father. In the silence that stretched between him and Chelsea, Genoa City held its breath. From lavish boardrooms to the dark corners where decisions are made, everything revolves, once again, around the eternal question for Adam Newman: is he a loyal son of Victor or a man brave enough to define his own values, even if it means going against the man who made him? Audra couldn't help but feel frustrated thinking about what Holden had just done. In her eyes, him giving Claire Newman any information was a grave mistake, but what angered her most was that he did it so easily, as if he had no idea how dangerous the person he was dealing with was. Claire wasn't the type to just listen and let it go. Claire was the type of woman who memorized every detail, analyzed, pieced together, and turned every piece of information into a weapon. Audra knew that better than anyone, and that's why she felt betrayed when she realized that Holden, who was supposed to be on her side, had accidentally given Claire the opportunity to attack. She looked at him and saw only an unforgivable carelessness, a gullibility that she couldn't accept in this dangerous war. In Audra's mind, everything became very clear. Holden had opened a door that shouldn't have been opened, and now they would both have to face the consequences. Audra's anger stemmed not only from her fear of being sabotaged by Claire, but also from the bitterness of hearing Holden speak of Claire with such inexplicable calm. She accused Holden of not really caring about her, that what he cared about was Claire herself, the dangerous new game he wanted to try. Audra sensed in Holden's eyes, in his voice, in the way he defended his decision, a softness that was not meant for her. She saw in him a man who was always drawn to unpredictable challenges, and Claire, with her ambition, her intelligence, her unpredictable cracks, was the perfect next target. Audra couldn't bear the thought of Holden, unconsciously or intentionally letting Claire into a dangerous area that should have been sealed off. She couldn't understand why he would bring Claire to the dark room. A place linked to memories and people they had both struggled to leave. For Audra, it was more than just a space. It was a symbol of old mistakes, dirty secrets, and relationships that should never be rekindled. Just thinking about the dark room sent a shiver down Audra's spine. It was a collection of faces, deals, promises that were never pure, and things that, if exposed, would take more than one person with them. Holden knew this very well. He knew the past there was not his own, nor was it something Claire had any right to touch, yet he still pulled her into its orbit, still letting her see, hear, and feel a world that should have been locked away in a moment of anger. Audra couldn't help but wonder, had Holden lost his sense of self, or had he completely lost his survival instinct, recklessly messing with their history and the people involved? The question wasn't just ironic, it was real fear, because once Claire begins to connect the dots, once she gets it right or wrong about what happened there, it will put not only their careers, their reputations, but also their safety at risk. In an effort to reassure her, Holden assures Audra that the story he's told Claire is a highly sanitized version. He emphasizes that he's been extremely careful with the details, offering just enough vagueness to satisfy Claire's curiosity without giving her access to the core of the truth. He also reiterates that he hasn't named the man, that there's no specific identity, no direct clues that could lead Claire back to the secrets they've been forced to bury. For Holden, it was a calculated move to give Claire the impression that she knew just enough, that he was being reasonably honest, to calm her down instead of digging deeper and accidentally reaching the point of no return. In his mind, if he kept completely silent, Claire would become more suspicious, more clingy, more unwilling to let go. But being thrown a piece of partial information, she could be temporarily satisfied, at least for now. But for Audra, that explanation was not enough. She saw the flaw in Holden's logic, or at least she saw the risk he was trying to downplay. Claire was not one to accept the surface easily. The more a person like Claire received a safe version, the more reason she had to believe that there was something hidden behind it. Holden's choice to tell a half-hearted story, in Audra's eyes, was nothing more than arousing Claire's investigative instincts. Even more, she knows very well that if one detail is set out of tune, one piece of the puzzle doesn't fit, Claire will know and won't stop. Audra feels like Holden is betting them both on the naive belief that Claire will stop at a door that is only half open, and that hurts her. Holden thinks he has enough control of the situation, while Audra sees him as adding more danger to secrets too dark to play mind games with. Finally, in her wordless frustration, Audra had no choice but to face reality. They were standing on the edge. Claire had been given enough information to appease her curiosity or to spark a new manhunt. It depended on how she reacted, and neither of them had complete control. Holden believed in his choice. Believed that his caution had kept a safe boundary. Audra was not so sure. But whether she believed it or not, she knew that from this moment on, they both had to be more united, more vigilant, more wise, or else the terrible story, the story they had tried to hide from the world and from themselves, would be brought to light in the most brutal way. And amid all that emotional turmoil, what remained was not just anger or blame, but a deep fear that one small decision today could be the cause of everything collapsing tomorrow.